Good afternoon, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of April 27, 2022. The City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting remotely, and we are preparing to reopen the council chambers to public meetings at our regularly scheduled meeting next week on Wednesday, May 4th at 6:30 p.m. We invite our community to attend our meeting in person if they choose to do so. Until then, there are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. To watch or participate in the remote meeting, you can watch on council meetings live on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may also watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch our past meetings. And you may call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by dialing 425-616-3920. Conference ID is 724-887-726#. You may make public comment at our meeting, and you may find the comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you select the register here to provide comment via Zoom link, you'll fill out a form, and that you can request to be live at any future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. And if you'd like to participate, you must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting, and forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link or number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by either arriving at the council chambers to attend our meeting, which will be live starting next week, or you can submit comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. And please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office, and we do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are not related to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members or provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office at 425-257-8703. At this time, I'd like to call on Councilmember Ryan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I'll read the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stahoops people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society. And at this time, what do we have next? I think we need to take the roll. Clerk, will you please call attendance?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of April 20th, 2022?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And we will welcome Mayor Franklin. Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, council members. Just a quick note that we're observing Workers' Memorial Day this week, and I've asked Councilmember Fossey to share the proclamation with all of you under her comments, but also at an event later on. So thank you, Councilmember Fossey, and just keep our workers in your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Toohey.
Thank you, Council President. So I did attend the Snow 911 board meeting last week, and I thought I'd give kind of an overview of what that board does and some of the major projects that they're working on. So I serve on that board with 15 multi-year program. The focus is to deliver, update, upgrade, standardize, modernize, and improve the communication capabilities of 911, police, fire, emergency medical, emergency management, corrections, and sheriffs. So it encompasses every first responder out there. And then in 2018, the voters of Snohomish County passed a 0.1% emergency communications and facilities.
Member Schwab, look forward to seeing how they get themselves assembled into a new operating building. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Vogley.
Thank you so much. I actually have a question for Councilmember Toohey, and hopefully it's quick. Speaking of Snow 911, is the 988 number that's coming up in July going to be encompassed with 911?
It's my understanding that the 988 call center is running through the Volunteers of America as the major company or the major organization, as well as a couple smaller nonprofits, and it will depend on what county they're in. And was the latest that I read last week.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, no worries.
And we have a Parks and Quality of Life meeting today after council at 4, and we'll be hearing about tree canopy and such. And that is all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Let's see, in the past week, I've attended a couple of neighborhood meetings. The first one's in person that I attended that way. Both were hybrid though, and I applaud the hosts for making the work to make that go as well as it did. It's challenging. Both were at libraries. Cascade View met at the Evergreen Branch Library in one of the meeting rooms, and Pinehurst Beverly Park met last night at the Cascade High School Library. Really, I appreciate the neighbors and members and the chance to say hello to these folks and do it in person. And a kind of a quick note, last night's presentation included one by Sharing Wheels, the Bicycle Center. A great opportunity for people to get bikes and get involved and get their bikes fixed with tools and instruction there that you can get for free. So I'd encourage anybody who's interested in bikes that way to get involved. It's a great mode of transport. The speaker mentioned that something like 60% of the people were getting bikes from them were actually for commuting, and about 40% were for recreation. So that's just great stuff on all counts, and I certainly encourage support and participation there. And if you've got a trouble with your bike that you can't fix, the experts there can do it for you. Silver Lake neighborhood, another one that I'm involved with, will have their first meeting this year on May 7th, so I plan on being there as well. And then lastly, the Program Policy Committee of the Board of Health at the Snohomish Health District, that's a word salad, met last week. Partly it had to do with approving some staffing and other background work that we can mostly all leave to them comfortably, but it helps keep us healthy and looking ahead for potential outbreaks and other problems. Also worth note, the health district is moving toward getting a successor to our current health director, health officer, Dr. Spitters. Thanks so much to him for calm and considered leadership in difficult times. I think this pandemic has shown us that this can be a particularly important position, and I'm optimistic that we'll have a new health officer soon. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
All right, thank you so much. Not too much from me today. Attended Council of Neighborhoods on Monday, and Stephen Benchero from the company that's going to be taking over Rubatino joined for the meeting to share more about their new the work that they're going to be doing in the community. So really excited for our garbage to be the folks that we're contracting with. They're going to continue doing a great job for the city, and just their commitment too for environmental work. Thank you to Councilmembers Arlingo for taking the lead on last night's Beverly Park Pinehurst meeting. Really appreciate that. And then the mention about sharing wheels too reminds me that May is bike month. And so if everybody has wheels that they want to dust off and get out on the road, it's a great month to do it. And also a reminder that this Saturday is the Downtown Everett Association's planting day. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up for it, I can go online to sign up for a shift to literally get your hands dirty in downtown Everett and work on planting little flowers to help beautify the area. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to remind our neighbors that the neighborhood groups are starting to meet again. And sometimes it's difficult to get the word out. I know there are social apps out there. You can also go to the city website and you can sign up for alerts in your Outlook. And speaking of that, the View Ridge Madison neighborhood group is meeting May 3rd at 7 p.m. at Madison Elementary, located at 616 Pex Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention I did have a chance to meet with VOA on 988 and this last week. And I know that we're going to, as council, have another opportunity to get more information, but I can share just a couple of things. As I'm sure a lot of you know, we were the first state to pass legislation on this. It's a national thing, but each state has to kind of pass its own implementation and kind of the funding for it. From my understanding, it's kind of a three-legged stool. Eventually, it's supposed to be streamlining kind of crisis care in Washington and mobile crisis outreach teams, and also having to do with, stabilization services. But July 16th is the day I have for when things are getting started with that. With 1477, the legislation, they said, I think it was possibly a 2 to 5 year implementation timeline. So it'll take some time to do that. But there are currently 6 or 7 subcommittees at the state level dealing with different things like technology and rural resources and, a few other types of committees to address different issues when it comes to 988. But I'm sure we'll get more information on our upcoming meetings. So that's just a quick update on that. I also had a recent ride along with Officer Given, and I just want to give props to whoever hired Officer Given, because she is absolutely amazing and just the exact kind of officer any community could wish to have. The Workers' Memorial. The Workers' Memorial ceremony is tonight, Wednesday at 5 p.m. at the Mission Building Courtyard on the Snohomish County campus, and is open to the public. The annual Snohomish County Workers' Memorial Ceremony honors workers who were lost this last year through workplace violence, accidents, and illnesses. So now, on behalf of the City of Everett and Mayor Franklin, I am honored to read this proclamation. Whereas each year we observe Workers' Memorial Day as a day to remember those who have died on the job, and we acknowledge those who survived their injuries but may become disabled or ill. And the City of Everett, Washington's mayor and council honor those workers by recognizing April 28th as Workers' Memorial Day, and by speaking out about the work-related tragedies, highlighting the fact that too many workers are at risk of injury, illness, or death. And we rededicate ourselves to fighting for safe and equitable workplaces. Now, therefore, I, Cassie Franklin, Mayor of the City of Everett, do hereby proclaim April 28th as Workers' Memorial Day. The City of Everett encourages all community members to recognize and honor those killed, injured, and disabled on the job. Sign this day in April 2022. Mayor Cassie Franklin. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I just for other council members, since Mary's going to represent us at the event this evening, that's why I asked Mary to read it rather than how I normally read them. So appreciate you sharing that with your colleagues, and thank you all.
Thank you. And I do not have any liaison reports, but I did want to remind my colleagues that next week we will be, and our community, colleagues and community need to know, next week we will be conducting our council meeting in person in the council chambers at the corner of 29th and Wetmore Avenue at 6:30 p.m. For those who are interested in attending, I just want to let everyone know that it will be mask optional and we will not be checking vaccination records. So if you are someone who feels concerned about that, we are continuing to have the option for the public to call into our meetings. So you can follow the instructions that have been given. If you're attending the meeting, just be conscious of those who may want social distance and try not to crowd people in the room. But I'm very excited for the council to get back in our chambers. I think this shows a real promising trajectory upward of getting back to a more normal existence, although we know that we'll be living with COVID-19 and probably its successors for some time. So that's exciting for us. Do we have an update from administration today?
Thank you. No update this afternoon.
Thank you. We'll move on to city attorney comments. Mr. Hall, what do you have for us today?
Thank you, Council President. I don't have a report today, but we are requesting a 25-minute executive session to discuss 2 legal matters pursuant to RCW 423110-1I with potential council action to follow on one of those matters. Thank you.
Thank you. And Deb Williams, have we received any comments from the community for public comment?
Good afternoon, President Stonecipher. We have received no written comment and we have no one waiting to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the 3 consent items?
Councilmember Zarlingo so moves.
Councilmember Ryan seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We are going to move to our action agenda. So our first item, number 4, is the election of the council vice president for the year 2022. I provided process instructions to the council, but I want to let those who are watching the meeting understand how we're going to do this. So I'm going to open nominations for vice president, and any council member may nominate another member or themselves. And then once everyone who wants to make a nomination has had the opportunity to do so, I'll close the nominations. And then we'll at that time ask if any, if all who are nominated are willing to serve as the council vice president, and anyone who is unwilling to do so will be removed from consideration. Then we'll ask the clerk to call the roll, and each council member will state the name of the nominee for which they'd like to cast their vote. It's also possible if a council member would like to abstain from voting, they may do so. The clerk will tally the votes, and if we have a majority for one of the nominees, that person will be elected as vice president. If we do not have a majority, then the person who has the least number of votes will be eliminated. And then if there are, 2 low vote numbers that are have the same number of votes, they'll both be eliminated. Then we will call the roll again and repeat until we have someone that has a majority of council votes to elect them as the council vice president. Are there any questions on the process before we get started?
Do the nominations require a second, President Stonecipher?
Nope. Anyone can nominate anyone, and they will be considered in our voting process.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to now open the nominations for vice president, and anyone who would like to make a nomination can just unmute themselves, and hopefully we won't have a free-for-all here. We're going to do it a little haphazardly. Unmute yourself and make your nomination.
Councilmember Zarlingo nominates Judy Tui as vice president.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fossey nominates Councilmember Paula Ryan as vice president.
Thank you. Any additional nominations? Going once, going twice. I will now close the nominations. And we have Councilmember Tui and Councilmember Ryan will be considered. First of all, I'd like to ask Councilmember Ryan, are you willing to serve as council vice president if you're elected?
Yeah, I have some remarks that I'd like to share too, if now's a good time or maybe later.
You can, well, we on the closing of the nominations, let's first make sure we've got members, the other council member is willing to serve. So Councilmember Tui, are you willing to serve as vice president if you are elected?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. We've got 2 nominees for council, and I will go down the roll one time so people can make comments, and then we'll call the first roll. So let's see, we start with Councilmember Tui. You'd like to make any comments or to ask questions?
No questions. I just would be honored to serve as council vice president for the remainder of 2022. We do have a lot of work to do ahead of us this year, and I would be honored to help in any way that the city calls upon me. So I'm honored to be nominated and would love to be vice president. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks so much. I didn't even know we were going to talk about stuff. This is great. And let's see. I hear a phone ringing in the background, so now I got confused. I believe that Paula, Councilmember Ryan, will be awesome at vice president, because she's new, but also, as I have experienced, just, out the door, quick, asking the questions and really getting involved. And Councilmember Tui would also be fine. I'm absolutely sure of that. And we've seen her in the role before, and it's noble for both of you. So I don't have any questions, I guess. I'll let it go now.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
To only say that I'm happy we have 2 candidates who are willing to take on this responsibility and prepare for future leadership. I think that's great. We've got 2 good things to choose from.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to share that I am well positioned to take on a leadership role even this early in my term. I previously worked for 2 King County council members in 2 different roles, and most notably as the Director of Constituent Relations for King County District 1, which had a total of 203,000 constituents at the time. King County has 9 council members, each have 5 staff plus interns, and I now work for Snohomish County Council. And Snohomish County has 5 council members with 1 aide, and I'm the aide for District 2. There's the general meetings and committees to track, and now with this role as a city council member, I have a lot of experience across various jurisdictional models and have a deep foundational understanding of how government can function and also how it cannot function. And with all of this strong background in governance through, I have all of this also through a strong background in governance through districted representation. So well positioned and poised to take on this role. And additionally, with voters approving districts, I feel like there was a clear message that they're ready for a new perspective and a new way of conducting business. And I think we should fulfill their intent. So I'd be honored to serve in this leadership role and in this capacity, and confident that I can well perform the duties of this position. I'd be grateful for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
I just thanks both candidates for stepping up and wanting to serve in a higher capacity.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
I wanted to echo that sentiment and just say thank you for both of you being willing to, offer your service in this capacity. And I know that we have benefited in the past from Councilmember Tuohy's leadership, and my nomination and support of Councilmember Ryan is no statement on Councilmember Tuohy, but more so a statement about the educational opportunity that this would be for somebody who is newer on council to be in that role and to learn from President Stonecipher. I think that would be really beneficial given how many new folks that we do have that will be here for a significant amount of time, and to have that kind of knowledge passed down. I just don't think that's an opportunity that we should pass up. And I think that it would also be beneficial to have somebody, in that kind of role that is one of the district representations instead of having both two at large as president and vice president. So again, I just appreciate you both for offering up, your time and your efforts and your leadership in this. And I really thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And I will also echo those sentiments. I'm grateful to see that we have members that are willing to step forward and take on additional responsibilities. I'm also really pleased that the council has adjusted our procedures to allow for the election of vice president. And I hope that the method that we're using this time could be a model for electing the vice president and in fact the council president in the future. I know that there has been question about what the process should and has been in the past, and so we will see how this works and perhaps can serve as a model for the future. With that, as I said, we will take the roll, and each council member will cast their vote or abstain, cast their vote for one of the nominated members or abstain from voting. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tuohy.
Would vote for Councilmember Tuohy.
Councilmember Vogely.
My vote is for Councilmember Paula Ryan.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
I vote for Councilmember Judy Tuohy.
Councilmember Ryan.
I vote for Councilmember Ryan.
Councilmember Schwab.
I vote for Councilmember Tuohy.
Councilmember Fosse.
I vote for Councilmember Ryan.
President Stonecipher.
I vote for Councilmember Tuohy.
We have 3 votes for Councilmember Ryan and 4 votes for Councilmember Tuohy. So the majority votes go to Councilmember Tuohy.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for participating in this process. Councilmember Tuohy, congratulations. Councilmember Ryan, thank you for stepping forward. We will definitely be in good hands with all of our council members serving as committee chairs in leadership roles, and look forward to working with you, Councilmember Tuohy, as in this vice president capacity. Do you have any comments to make?
No, thank you for the support. I know that Councilmember Ryan would be a great leader too, and I do see her falling into these positions very easily, and so I look forward to that, and I look forward to completing this year, doing whatever I can to help out the president and the mayor. So thank you very much for your support, everybody.
Thank you. We'll move on with the rest of our action agenda. Moving to item 5, adopt the resolution authorizing recovery of abatement costs pursuant to EMC 1.20.090 at 2010 Lexington Avenue. Do I hear a motion?
I suppose Vogely will make that motion.
Councilmember Schwab will second.
Thank you. And I believe before we take the roll, I believe we have someone here to give us a Tony and Sawar. Is there a staff presentation for this?
Yes, good afternoon.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Tony
Thank
Lee,
you.
building official, and with me is Sawar Zakoli, code compliance supervisor. We would like to give a brief summary of this resolution before council. We are asking that council authorize the recovery of abatement costs incurred securing a condemned residential structure located at 2010 Lexington Avenue. The structure lacked a safe and legal electrical system. On December 2nd, 2021, the structure was found unfit for human habitation in order to be immediately vacated by the hearing examiner. On January 19th, 2022, the code enforcement unit was notified that the structure remained unlawfully occupied. On January 26th, code official Zakoli ordered the vacation and securing of the structure. The owner was notified that the structure was not secured by the owner, the city would do so. On February 22nd, in absence of action taken by the owner, the city authorized a private contractor to board up the structure. This resolution is seeking to place a lien on the property for the recovery of costs incurred upon any future sale of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have, we'll go down the roll and see what questions we have from council members, starting with council member Toohey.
I don't have any questions or comments right now.
Thank you. Council member Vogely.
No questions right now.
Thank you. Council member Zarlingo.
Well, having read the documents on this, I guess I'm sad that it comes to this, especially at a time where housing is in short supply in our community, and we're doing all we can to get more. My regrets, no further comments.
Thank you. Council member Ryan.
No questions or comments.
Council member Schwab.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Council member Fossey.
No questions or comments. Thanks.
And, you know, it's been a while since we've done an abatement like this. And Tony, maybe you or Sawar can remind us, we place a lien on the property that essentially just sits there. And is that only recovered upon sale of the property?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And is there any indication of what the owner's intention is to do with this property? Is it a local owner, or is this these absent property owners?
It is a local owner who inherited the property, and he told one of our code enforcement officers during this process that it was his intent to fix up the property and possibly resell it in the near future.
Okay, let's hope so.
Yes.
Great. And I think with that, that's all the questions and comments we have. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 6, approve the Seattle Outboard Association application to hold a 2-day boating regatta on Silver Lake on June 4th and 5th, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Toohey moves the motion.
Councilmember Ryan seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Let's see if we have any questions, starting with Councilmember Toohey.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. I do have some questions. And the biggest one is when this Outboard Association came to us last year with their 2-day proposal, it was told to the community that, oh, it is just this 1 year, maybe in 10 years, we'll do another 2-day thing, because it was like I don't remember. It was the party 2-day regatta, whatnot. So why 2 days?
Bob Leonard, Parks and Facilities. Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm going to say that the way I believe it was characterized was it was going to be on a trial basis to see how the 2-day event went. We believe that the event was successful and that it would be, it was presented this year again. The Seattle Outboard Association wanted to hold another 2-day event because of the success of the prior year and because they thought that it actually helped with the setup of the event. It's a pretty big event to be setting up for 1 day. Plus, it allowed them more time to clean up and make the park even better than when they first started to use the park. So that, along with the public participation, gives people more of an opportunity to visit and watch the event. So they felt like it was better for them to have a 2-day event. And that's what they applied for, and that's what the park board, there was discussed at the park board whether to go with the one or go with what they were asking for with the 2-day event, and the park board voted to recommend the 2-day event.
Thank you. I'll leave my question there and let others ask questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, first, I want to thank the Parks Board for their work on this. I've attended their meetings previously before joining the council, and I've listened to their deliberations. As pretty much everybody here knows, the tradition of these races on Silver Lake goes back decades. The tradition had always been for a 1-day race occupying the shoreline and the adjacent areas of the park. More than 20 years ago, this council and the city chose to spend some millions of dollars to buy the Silver Lake RV Park property adjacent to Thornton Sullivan Park to the south. And effectively doubling the shoreline available to the public. Unfortunately, because of the route and speeds of the boats, the safety requirements of their insurance, this additional shoreline and the most recently built long dock out there are not usable by the public during race days. The proposal last year, I recall, was indeed as a way to accommodate a regional race. There were different, as far as I remember, representations made with respect to the council and the Parks Board, and the council has considered this, as has the Parks Board, a couple of times because the year before the race was not held due to COVID. So the prime idea appeared to me to be accommodating a regional race every few years. And of course, those regional races draw people from their larger races and draw people from farther distances. So while this has been a single-day event, except for this last year, the area, that part of Everett in general, and the rest has grown a lot with smaller lots, higher density housing, including a lot of apartments and townhomes. And I'm acutely aware that the parks have become people's backyards. They're being used increasingly. So I take care to be mindful of the need for these resources and how they're used. The dramatic increasing in things like paddleboarding and kayaking in the last several years. And as noted with the Parks Board, there are impacts on wildlife and water quality with these 2-stroke engines, race engines that don't burn all the fuel that comes out of their tanks. And as I see this, it's the job of the City Council to balance priorities and impacts to make the best policies possible. I've lost sleep on this because I do take very seriously what the Parks Board recommends. And yet, in this era of increased inflation, increased demands on the park to serve people who have it as a low-cost way to have family recreation, we've all seen people coming to the park in the mornings, turn the kids loose on the beach, put a tablecloth on one of the picnic tables, string up some balloons or banners, and I've seen retirements, I've seen anniversaries, and a whole lot of birthday events. When the park is used that way, I've encountered people walking the park during race day who were leaving because of the noise and the inaccessible beach. The one small portion of beach that is sometimes accessible during race day is something that several have characterized as mucky and undesirable and overcrowded. And it's just because of the speed of the boats and the requirements of insurance. In one of the recent neighborhood meetings, a couple had told me that they went last year to have a meal at Emery's and had that spoiled to a significant extent by the noise of the boats that are something on the order of a half a mile away. That's the opposite end of the lake. And yet the not only the water, but the shoreline are occupied by the racers. So there's a real impact on the rest of the public, especially people who don't have the money to finance race boats and travel. And so they're very much in my mind. And I think if the powerboat, if the Seattle Outboard Association and its members, it's just hard to see taking up an entire summer weekend. If I knew June 4th or 5th, I guess it is, we're going to be rainy and windy, I'd assent without question. I've been there on some of those days, but it seems to me that that's quite a load for the public to bear. And if the Outboard Association wants more time and are willing to contribute some more of their own time, then I think a 2-day event on a Friday, Saturday should be considered, or a Sunday, Monday. I think that would balance better the public interest and needs in this with a private organization. So I respect the Parks Board's consideration and deliberation and their recommendation. My North Star is always the best representation of all the community members, and with a special focus on District 5. And accordingly, either now or at the end of the comments as appropriate, I intend to move that we approve the special use permit as we generally did in the past for 1 day, the first Saturday in June 4th, 2022.
Thank you. I'm going to accept that as a motion to amend. Do we hear a second on the motion to amend the?
Councilmember Fossey seconds, just for the sake of discussion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to amend to a 1 day, and we'll continue on. If Councilmember Zarlingo, do you want to speak to this at this juncture, or should we move down the rest of the roll?
Go ahead, move on. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move now to Councilmember Ryan.
For clarification, are we speaking to the motion or to the underlying?
We can speak. I'm going to allow latitude to speak to both since we didn't get through the roll the first time. So you can speak to the underlying motion and as well as the motion to amend.
Thank you. I think with the Everett parks and our public parks offer really amazing ways for people to gather, and moving into a post-COVID world, having events like this that can allow people to come to a free space and celebrate each other and celebrate the city and enjoy such a unique opportunity. I think it's a great way to celebrate the city. I was in the Parks Board meetings during discussions, and I think I didn't quite hear if it was mentioned or not, but the Seattle Outboard Association mentioned that all of the work that goes into setting up for the event, there's just a tremendous amount of labor. They start at like 5 or 6 in the morning to set up booths and get their materials ready, and then they're shutting things down at like 8 or 9 at night. So to have a 1 day event, there's a tremendous amount of labor that goes into volunteer labor too to set up for these types of events. So having it over 2 days helps to make it worth their while, basically. So I was respected that perspective. I will be supporting the Parks Board recommendation. It was discussed at length. There was a months-long public input process for the public to provide input on whether or not they would like to see a 1 or 2 day event, and it was a unanimous decision by the Parks Board to put forward a recommendation for a 2 day event. So I will be supporting the Parks Board recommendation. And frankly, I'd love to see a more unique events like this in the city of Everett. I think it makes it a great way to bring in tourists and have just to celebrate the city overall. And maybe there could be a way to combine some of these events and resurrect Salty Sea Days while we're at it. So I just wanted to share that comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of questions. I heard something about cleanup, and did the Parks Board feel that the cleanup process would be done proficiently? Is that there? I heard a comment on that earlier. Could someone address the cleanup process?
Councilmember Schwab, I believe I was just stating that the Seattle Outboard Association felt like with a 2 day event that they had more time for setup and for removing all of their event stuff and making the park look nicer than when they started using it.
Were you around with previous events? Can you give a little bit of history of how they returned the park after their previous events?
I'm going to ask Kimberly Moore or Corey Rettenmeyer, our park program manager, to see if they can address that.
Hi, Kimberly Moore, Assistant Parks Director. The Seattle Outboard Association has a strong desire on Sunday after the conclusion of the event to invite volunteers from the Silver Lake community to join their association to do an overall park cleanup event where they walk the park and clean up any trash and litter that is left behind. That's the extent of it to my knowledge.
And do you remember how they did last year?
Last year was a very, very rainy weekend. And so we had fairly light attendance in the park overall. We received no reports. So that typically means that the park is left in pretty great shape.
Right, right. And then I have another question that is connecting with the community. I guess it's two parts. One is, what if, like Council Member Zarlingo mentioned, I happened to be walking my dog during this, and I didn't know about the event. And I show up. What am I confronted with? Is there area for me to go? Is the whole park shut off? Is there places for me just to hang out for a little bit? What would I expect? Or is it just totally cut off and I can't use it?
I'm gonna turn it over to Corey Rettenmeyer because he walked the park last year with council members Zarlingo, our park rangers, and the Seattle Outboard Association, and so he can fill you in on what the public still has access to.
Hi, Councilmember Schwab. I'm Corey Rettenmeyer, Parks Manager. Yeah, when we walked the course last year, we did adjust some of the public viewing area, and we wanted to extend the swimming area as much as we could, but there are still public access points at the main area where you come into Silver Lake, and then people are still able to walk down, and there are flagged off areas just for the protection of people on the shoreline, but you are able to walk up and around, like for example with your dog, you are going to be able to have viewing areas as a public use. And they also do, the Seattle Outboard Association does monitor the opening areas at the main parking lot there, and then also along Silver Lake Drive. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you. One more question, and that is the overall program's connection with the community. I mean, is there going to be, are people in our community? I know this is more of a specialty type sport, but is there a connection piece, either with businesses or with neighborhoods, that sort of thing?
I can't really speak too much to the direct community involvement. I know there's sponsorship that the Seattle Outboard Association does in terms of racers from the Everett area. I couldn't tell you that. It's definitely a regional sport that is run out of the Seattle Outboard Association, and they run events throughout the region, and Everett just happens to be one in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councilmember Foskey.
Thanks. I just want to preface this with I appreciate and often lean towards recommendations that come from bodies like the Parks Board and whatnot, because I know a lot of time and effort usually goes into those decisions being made. So I appreciate that. I guess a couple of the questions I had were regarding any sort of environmental impacts. Is there a difference between 1 day or 2 day or overall with this kind of event? And the other, if somebody could maybe just speak to overall the benefits of having, supporting a regional sport or a big event like this, maybe on our tourism or economy, or what kind of the pros look like for our community overall with this type of event.
Well, Councilmember Foskey, I can speak a little bit to the environmental concerns. Two of those have been brought up in the past, the water quality. So I'll speak to that briefly. First, the Snohomish County Surface Water has been the agency that monitors the water. They do an annual report. While there isn't a report specifically on mini hydroplanes on the lake and the impacts, they do an annual report, and the water quality was deemed good. and good quality. So from that perspective, there wasn't an issue. Comment from the surface water was that the close proximity of the lake to the homes and the public, there's probably more impact from the runoff from pesticides and the oil as opposed to the actual event itself. And the other issue that has come up in the past is concerning bald eagle nests that are in the area. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a report on the effects of noises on bald eagles, and the biggest thing was really the fledgling time of the impact on the fledglings. And at this point, the race takes place after the fledgling period, so the impact on the noise on the wildlife is not significant.
Thank you.
And then I believe your other question was regarding the regional draw, is that and the impact on like heads and beds. Is that what you're referring to?
I just need a kind of, why is this good as far as supporting like regional sports, this particular activity, that kind of overview of the benefits to bringing activities and encouraging them in our local parks?
Well, I can say that we do get community staying in Everett and in our hotels, and it is a regional draw, so you do get people that are traveling. We have a lot of events in our sports complexes, for example, that bring a lot of people from the region to stay in our city, and that of course has been a benefit. Again, I think it was stated before, this event has been a cherished event by a lot of people and has been going around for a long time. So people look forward to it, and it takes place in Everett. So from that perspective, it's a really cool event. That's, I think, all I can say about that.
So probably having it over 2 days might allow for additional hotel stay, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back to the top of the rolls because some did not get to speak to the motion to amend to a one-day event. And that will start with Council Member Toohey.
On their application, their estimated attendance is 100 to 1,000, which is kind of a big spread, pretty low, not that high. And do you have a head count for what happened last year?
I couldn't speak to the exact number, but it was my understanding it was between 200 and 300.
And that's for a 2-day event.
That was for a 2-day event that was pretty rainy the entire time.
Right.
I think a typical event, you're probably looking at between 500 and 700 people over the course of the weekend, with 1,000 being on the high end.
Right. Okay. And when it says 50 vehicles, that means boats. 50 different boats will be participating. Application is that I was trying to see how many boats they anticipate.
That's trailers and vehicles for the event, where they'll be parking throughout the event.
Okay.
Not the actual mini hydroplane boats; those are separate.
Do you know how many they usually have? I couldn't find it on the application.
It varies from year to year based on how many divisions they have in the number. So I couldn't tell you that number.
Okay, it just I thought maybe the numbers might be a little bit higher for participation of the community. So I don't know what kind of outreach they're doing or publicity for a 2-day event. That's, pretty low. So
yeah, I believe the number of vehicles that you're referencing is referencing their vehicles that they'll be using.
Right.
But I think the main parking lot definitely gets a lot more from people from the public parking there as well.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I understand why a 2-day event makes sense for this organization for setup and cleanup and everything. If the numbers of attendance were higher, I would totally support a 2-day event because it does produce heads and beds. I don't know how many the boat owners stay overnight, or if they're here just for a one day and then somebody else comes in for the next day. So I would like to find out a little bit more on that, but I'm up in the air between a 1 and a 2 a day, but I do get that logistically it must be crazy to try to do all that in one day. It's a big setup. So, and I just hope they have publicity to get more people out, because it's really kind of small numbers. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you. And I think Councilmember Vogely did not get to speak to the motion to amend.
Thank you. Thanks for all of those in-depth questions, everybody. That was helpful to me. And is it possible to have a Sunday, Monday, or a Friday, Saturday, or is that just no?
It's always been, it's one of those things where it's always been that day. I think that the Seattle Outboard Association would probably say that, these are people that have jobs, and so the weekend is kind of the preferred time to draw. And one of the reasons for the 2-day event is it allows for these racers to qualify for other national sanctioned events that draw more people, and they don't necessarily qualify for a 1-day event.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking that even though last year during the rain and after the COVID, not having an exemplary amount of people, I imagine if it continues to be a 2-day event, it's going to just get bigger. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will add my comments. I, having served on as the liaison to the Parks Board for many, many years, this event and the permitting of the use of our park to conduct the event has been, I have to say, somewhat controversial over the at least the last 5 years. I think that it is interesting to me. It's a great example of the use of our parks for some special types of events that not everybody appreciates, but there's something about the diversity of our community where, where I would find this annoying and maybe kind of a nuisance with the noise. Others would find it very exciting. I'm a little troubled by the lack of high attendance, and I think that that may be COVID, that may be sort of telling us that this isn't something that our community cares about. So what I would ask is for the Parks Department to, whichever way this council decides to go with this 1- and 2-day event, I'd like to see if we can work with the Outboard Association to get us a count of how many people are attending their event, so we can have a better sense of that. I do recall that when this was discussed at the Parks Board meeting, I believe last year, maybe it was, my mind might be failing me, but one of the concerns that the Outboard Association has had is that other communities and venues that they've used have been foreclosed to this association for these kinds of races. So they're places that they can do them are dwindling. And so I think they're trying to, sort of double down on the places where we're still allowing it. But there may be a reason that, other places are not allowing them anymore. It's a big impact on the park and impact on others who would like to use our park for other uses. And if it's really only to serve the interests of a couple hundred people, I think that might not be a great use of our park assets. But for this year, I will support the Park Board's decision. But again, would just ask that we get some more information before this comes before council for another year's action on this. So with that, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll just on the amendment. So we are voting on whether to amend the permit from 2 days to a 1-day only event for the current summer year. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey?
No.
Councilmember Vogely?
No.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
No.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
No.
President Stonecipher.
No. Now we'll take up the underlying motion. Again, I would ask to make an amendment to the motion to ask the Seattle Outboard Association to provide a report subsequent to this event to the council to let us know how many people attend and any comments or concerns that are raised to them.
Councilmember Fosse, seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to amend to require a report to the council at the end of this event. And we'll take questions and comments on the amendment before we vote on it, starting with Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you for that motion, and I support that for sure. It would also be interesting, I think, if we could add to that to see what kind of publicity they do, what their outreach is to get folks interested in coming. So
I will accept that as a friendly amendment if Councilmember, who seconded? Councilmember Fosse would accept that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will add the publication schedule that they're using as well to that. Thank you, Councilmember Toohey. We'll go to Councilmember Vogley.
Aren't those things, didn't Bob just tell us about the numbers of people that were here? And I mean, we get that report anyways, so why does it need to be in the contract? Or
I don't think we get that report. I heard Corey Rettenmeyer saying that he didn't have a good count of the numbers.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, last year we didn't have great numbers, but I can reach out.
I think I misunderstood. So we didn't have accurate numbers. I was thinking that we didn't have great numbers, as in a lot of them.
Well,
okay.
No, that both are true. It was a low year last year. It was their first year out of COVID, and it was raining.
Okay.
The first year that we'd done a 2-year event, but I can pull up and see if we can find historical numbers, because they do counts.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
That's all.
Council President, if I may add something to the conversation.
Yes, thank you.
We have an ordinance that governs this event, and I think the ordinance needs to be updated. So as part of your amendment to this, I think that we would like to bring back to council an updated or take a look at the ordinance and update the ordinance governing this event, so that council can talk about the ordinance and include more language into the ordinance or less language, or decide what they want to do with the ordinance for this event.
That sounds great. I think we can take that up as a separate piece of business. Would that be something that would govern this year's event, or would that be something we'd probably have to work on subsequent?
We're working under the previous ordinance currently, but we would be working under the new ordinance, updated ordinance for the next event, hopefully.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you for that. That will be helpful. We'll continue down the roll, going to Councilmember Zarlingo.
I've read that ordinance in some detail and tried to evaluate the Seattle Outboard Association's request and plans in that. And of course, as you've seen in the documents in your agenda packet, the maps are kind of crude and approximate. And I think beefing up that ordinance and more specifics there, what we expect, and then of course making sure that we actually get that information will be helpful, because we'll have increasing impacts on the water use as well, the increasing impact, not only the shoreline, but the water use. And so the event in the past, in some cases, has closed surface access to the lake, but that is not the current plan or intent, but it certainly takes up the majority of the lake's surface, and with more users, the chance for problems there, interference, liability to the city, that sort of thing. And indeed, it was me who grabbed Corey and the representative from Seattle Outboard Association and a couple of other folks to walk that shoreline last year, because 2 years ago they weren't aware of one of the park entrances at all. And so the Silver Lake Drive entrance to Thornton Sullivan Park was funneling people behind and into the pits. So that's a problem for the city, a problem for their insurance, something they were just not aware of. And again, it was me who found that and got them there. And so I guess I think the ordinance probably ought to be tightened and clarified so that we know what we're restricting, what the impacts are, what those trade-offs are, and so that the city is not exposed to any liability in this.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely supportive of as many reporting metrics as we can get through the door. And I'm not sure if it's possible or not, but I would also love to see on the report if there's a way to capture where people originate from. So just, you know, how regional are we talking here? Like how far away are people coming for this specific event? And but I'm not sure if there's any way to actually capture that. I see Corey came online, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think we can definitely request that. We'll have a post meeting with Seattle Outboard after the event, so I can include this information as well.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to go back to that connection piece. I would hope that our neighbors and our community knows that this event is going on. They can make adjustments in their schedule. And boy, if there's a connection piece to our tourism here. And Councilmember Ryan, I'm in favor of Salty Sea Days.
Councilmember Fossey.
Just want to thank the other council members for their comments. I have no other questions. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. And I have nothing to add. We're going to vote now on the motion to amend, asking for some specific reporting. And in addition, we will be probably reviewing the ordinance that governs this event as well. Clerk, will you please take the roll on the motion to amend?
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And now we will take up the main motion as amended. And I'm just going to ask if anyone has any further comments or questions, please unmute yourself and make yourself known. I'm not going to go down the roll. Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll on the main motion?
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
No.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 7, authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Bird Rides Incorporated to operate a scooter share program within the city of Everett. I believe we have Dan Ernest. Are you going to give us a little briefing on this?
Yeah, very informal briefing. This is a contract that is picking up on a pilot program that we operated before the pandemic with Lime scooters. And we indicated our desire to several scooter companies to enter into a program this summer. And Bird was the most responsive initially. And we're proposing that we enter into a non-exclusive contract with Bird, which means other scooter companies are not being shut out of the program. I mean, shut out of a future contract, but just that the first one that we are entering into is with Bird scooters.
Thank you. Let's go down the roll to see if we have questions or comments. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, thank you. So I do have a question, Dan. So previously with Lime, we had helmets that were available and tried to enforce people to wear those. Is that part of this too?
Yes, it is. The distribution is a little bit different. Lime gave those helmets to the city, and they distributed some initially on their kind of welcome day, but we were distributing them. Bird has a nice program in that anyone who signs up for an account with Bird, they'll mail them a helmet, regardless of if they ever use a Bird scooter. So it's more decentralized, and we thought a better program. We're also working with them to be at least one or more of the farmers markets to hand out scooters, as well as just describe their safe operation and so forth.
So I assume they have the business model is similar to Lime, where they have a team that finds the abandoned scooters throughout the city at night and picks them up and gets them back charged and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, they redeploy them in places where there's high need and get them charged and cleaned up and removed from service if they're broken. That isn't a Bird employee. That's typically a contractor, as it was with Lime. And so it was a positive thing in that they will be employing, obviously, some local people to get that done.
So I do remember a few issues downtown, where they were abandoned in the sidewalk and not parked where they should be, and even riding on sidewalks. And so do we have a plan for that, Dan?
Well, we are not unique with that problem, and I think all the scooter companies are getting better about addressing that. One of the things that they've improved quite impressively from 2019 is the GPS tracking accuracy is much better, and they have added throttles to the Bird scooters, and so that they can slow speeds. They are piloting software right now that will allow them to slow down the scooters on sidewalks. All of the scooters have significant, signage on them and instructions in the app to say don't ride on the sidewalks. But here it's actually they actually will slow down the scooter to a stop if you are on a sidewalk. So we hope to get that technology deployed in Everett as soon as possible.
Okay, great, thank you, appreciate it. I don't have any
Council member, thank you. Next, Council Member Vogely.
Speaking of sidewalks, it's only downtown that you're not allowed to ride wheels on sidewalks, and the rest of the city, it's allowed. So how does that work into the slowing and then stopping a scooter on a sidewalk?
Well, that's a great question. And I would think that Bird scooters would just say don't ride on sidewalks, and that the deployment that we're proposing initially is largely in the downtown core, where they'll be redeployed. However, you can ride them throughout the city, and we are putting very little limits on where they can go besides Interstate 5 and Highway 2 and things like that. So I would think that everything that you would hear from Bird would say don't ride on sidewalks. As far as our own code, I wasn't aware of that difference in the locations. So that might be something that we should address as we move forward.
I'm still for riding bikes on the sidewalks, just so you know. And I see that Mike Butler is here. He must be from Bird.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yes. Yeah, nice to meet everyone.
I think that is all of my questions right now.
Thank you. Council Member Zarlingo.
Well, if Mr. Butler, I guess I'd like him to have a chance to comment on some of these things. I had a couple of questions myself. Maybe I'll throw those out there, and then as appropriate, we can include him for some answers. I mean, I'm happy to see additional mobility modes for people both downtown and other parts of the city. I'm also in receipt of a letter to the council raising some questions. Certainly one of mine had been that of helmets. There have been some stories in the news as the scooters get more powerful, more speedy, and are ridden sometimes in traffic, sometimes in the sidewalks. The lack of helmets has caused some significant injuries, and I don't think we're going to get into a whole bunch of enforcement in that, but I was happy to see the provision of some helmets in this. I hope that encourages people to use them. Just like the electric bikes are getting fast enough to be motorcycles, the scooters, as they get more technically capable, then the issues of GPS tracking or fencing and speeds and use on sidewalks is going to be complicated. The other element, I guess, that I hope that what we do is of a limited time. Was this a 1-year contract? Dan, can you clarify there?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The reason I asked that because I am more comfortable with a shorter duration contract, because we're proceeding into a bunch of unknowns here and interactions with other elements of our transportation infrastructure. And so a duration of a year will give us a chance to get an experience of this so that we can tune this up. And I know it's going to be a challenge to respond to some of the support issues with respect to getting the scooters recovered and some of the questions raised in the letter to council about responsiveness. So with all of that, I'm taking that seriously, and I guess I'm inclined toward the 1-year contract because it will give us a chance to see what tweaks we need to do to make this both effective and safe.
And if I could just follow on to that statement, the bird scooters are the maximum speed is 15 miles an hour, which is a fairly moderate speed for a bicyclist to ride. Some of the e-bikes that are coming out, like rad bikes and so forth, have quite a bit higher speeds capable, and I think those are obviously I can't speak to a scooter that is privately owned and operated, but these are the ones that in the share scooter program, they will be limited to 15 miles an hour.
Thank you for that clarification. We will go to Councilmember Ryan.
0 people are surprised that I have 100 questions. So I wanted to start. My first question is for Mike. I assume you're with Bird, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Can you share more with us about your program and what's on the table here today?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk to cities just like Everett, we always like to recommend that the city views this as some type of trial period. We've done enough market research to know that it's going to work, and it has worked in numerous cities just like Everett. So we like to say, hey, we're going to come in here. We're learning more about the city. We're learning more about the community. I've had a chance to meet with multiple staff members to do so. And then once this agreement is actually signed, hopefully today, that will begin more of kind of like the launch phase where we coordinate with the staff, we coordinate with local organizations on, how are we actually going to launch this? And then once that gets started, it's more of a ramp up period. So even though the contract says you may see, multiple hundred scooters at some point, we're going to start small in a very calculated, very measured amount. And then we'll slowly ramp up as soon as we see demand lift up, which we anticipate will be very high.
Thanks. So a couple more questions. So I've reached out to the small businesses in the area to ask about some concerns that they had and what went well and what didn't go well last time with the Lime scooters. And one of the biggest concerns was that the scooters can tend to be messy. So they get left on sidewalks, you get, and I have concerns about folks pushing folks in wheelchairs or with strollers or whatnot. So can you share more about how the company promotes responsibility and accountability to scooter riders to not be messy?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing concern of ours and also for residents. What I will say for that is we have been very proactive in how to educate the community on, hey, how do you ride properly? How do you park properly? Every single person that starts in Everett's going to have to complete a series of videos and tutorials so they know how to ride, how to park, where to do so, and also the acknowledgement of local laws. I can't speak to the program that was done previously. That was not our company. I don't know how they were running operations. I can just speak to ours. But what we do is fairly different. We actually would partner with 1, 2, or 3 local businesses or entrepreneurs whose sole business is income and is reliant on this program. And so because they're local, because they understand the city, because they know the market, they can actually run the business operationally better than we ever could. And also because they're from Everett, they can be very responsive in a matter of minutes as opposed to hours or days. And so, God forbid when, a small percentage of riders may not park properly, we can automatically be notified and then triage to that local business who can go and, move that vehicle. So, we can't stop people from doing those things the same way you can't stop people from running through stop signs and running through red lights. We can just do as best we can to mediate that.
I read in the materials that it said that riders are required to take a picture of where they leave their scooter. So is that, is there 100% compliance that's expected with that?
Yeah, so they have to take that photo. Obviously, they could always, turn it down to their feet and do it. But we audit those photos really for if there's an instance where someone is repeatedly becoming a bad actor. We reserve the right to suspend people's accounts if we feel like that's the case. So that does not happen very often, if at all. But that's one of the measures that we have there, to where if we say, hey, this person is parking improperly, they're constantly conducting themselves in unsafe riding, we have the ability to turn that person's account off to where they can no longer be maybe some type of nuisance to the community.
Great. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to follow on to that we had one question from a resident is what happens if one is parked in front of my driveway, for example, and there is a phone number and contact information on every Bird scooter, and they also have unique, I'll just call them license plates on them that have a unique number, so the actual scooter can be identified, which is a large benefit over one that wouldn't be operated by a company like Bird. So like Mike says, he can identify the bad operators who may have misparked or knocked it over or whatever. So it doesn't eliminate the problem. These things weigh about 50 pounds. They're not nothing to move, but they do. You could roll them out of the way if it was in a poor place, if you had to. But you could also identify to Bird who, or I guess the scooter that was misparked.
Cool. That'd be neat if there was like a QR code on it where you could just do that and send it in instead of having to write it down. Or
I actually have exactly that. Yeah, you can just scan it and then send us where it is, where it's wrong, and then that'll automatically be triaged to that local partner. So good thing your ideas are our ideas.
I'd call it a SIN, a scooter identification number. What are the geographical boundaries for so I heard that it's going to start downtown, but it's actually the city of Everett's boundaries that they could be used in. Did I catch that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, the idea of a program like this is not to just facilitate transportation in a small segment of the city. It's to see how something like this can transform how folks in Everett get around. And so the goal is to help someone get to the gym and get to Dutch Bros and get to Walgreens, get back to their house, as opposed to just servicing maybe kind of, North Everett or the downtown situation. So I think there are certain locations where we can actually block off those vehicles. We can set up basically an invisible fence, whether that's in a certain park or a certain segment of certain neighborhoods, to where if you tried to ride that vehicle into that zone, it would slowly come to a halt. You would be notified and you have to turn a 180. So very similar to where if that existed in your car today, you kind of slowly come to a halt and you wouldn't be able to drive there. So we've developed that technology for certain levels of customization for the city, just because we know every city is going to be different. But yeah, the goal is to help facilitate transportation citywide.
Thanks. I wanted to mention, I was glad to see the extensive equity considerations. Thank you for that. Under section 5E, 1 through 3, it talks about the evaluation of the scooter share program. And there's reporting that's required about number of customer complaints, summary of the nature of the complaints, the number of reported injuries. Dan, is that information that goes to you? And if so, what do we do with that information? Is there like a threshold of like, if it gets like too wild, like that we get to a point that we need to rein things back? Like, is that number set, or what happens with the numbers when they come to you?
It would go through Public Works, Corey Hurt, through our transportation traffic division, and they will treat it as they would any other mode of transportation when their concerns are reached. So yeah, it wouldn't sit on my desk, thankfully.
Okay, great. Just curious about that. I think the last mention too, also from the small business community, was just concerns about the scooters on the sidewalks and zipping through pedestrians and folks on the sidewalks. So any other ways to make sure that folks are just being responsible and careful with other folks would be, and keep them where they are designated would be great. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Well, I appreciate all the in-depth questions. I just have one. It's on the helmets. And I guess this is really more for the two questions. One is, I know last time and I wasn't a city council member, but didn't we pass helmets around to different businesses? I take it that's not going to be done this time. And then the second question is, I know there was a lot of concern about the effort that it would take to enforce the helmet requirement. So if someone could address those two things, that'd be great.
Well, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think there was a certain number of helmets that we got from Lime, and it was in the hundreds, a couple hundred, maybe 200. And we tried to hand those out in as many different ways as we could. Most businesses did not want to have those because they're, as you can imagine, pretty bulky. And, they might have taken 3 or 4 or 6 or 8, and they handed those out, we think, pretty quickly. But we had several boxes at the Everett Municipal Building, and people could come in and pick up a helmet from not the lobby, but from the reception area. So yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it a well-conceived program of distribution. It was more like, yeah, we got some helmets, and if you want one, come on by. I actually like Bird's program a lot more because it's more decentralized and allows people to get helmets. Obviously, it's not instant. If you want a helmet, if you want to go for a ride right now, it will take a little while to get a helmet. I do think that helmet wearers are probably more likely to own a helmet already that they will use on a scooter. Yeah, the enforcement issue I won't speak to directly because I don't know exactly where our police are with writing tickets or anything on any helmet use. Ryan Sass is saying that the city does not require helmets, and so there is no enforcement. Helmets are encouraged, and Bird's methods is what Ryan feels is a superior method.
Did that answer?
So that was, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. And Councilmember Fossey.
Thanks. And I appreciate all of my other council members' questions that answered a lot of mine. I am excited to have more transportation options in the city that isn't revolving around cars. I have a couple questions. When it comes to like the charging, how are they charged? What's that process again?
Yeah,
Mike, do you want to
we outsource. Yeah, I'll take that, Dan. We outsource all of our operations to about 2 to 3 local entrepreneurs or businesses who live in Everett. So these are folks that maybe have an existing business where they can basically divert some of their business resources towards another venture such as this. And so what they're going to do is they're responsible for deploying the vehicles every day, servicing them, charging them, repairing them, doing all of the above. And so they kind of have a revolving door of different tasks that they'll have to accomplish throughout the day. This is all done at their facility or their local business. And then from there, we actually share the revenue with them. So this is a local business that generates what can be a very significant income from doing this operation. And then, of course, they take that money and hopefully spend it at other local businesses. So it's a nice little flywheel effect.
Is it like just a standard plug?
It is. Yeah, they're plugged in the same way you do your computer, actually. Very simple.
Okay. And then the color of them, I know with the lime ones, it was really easy to see them. So that kind of had an extra level of protection and visibility, as obnoxious as the color was. But with these ones, are they silver or black?
Yeah, they're pretty metallic silver. They also have some reflectors on each side of them.
Okay. How, like, I guess maybe I didn't see the reflectors on the thing. How substantial are they?
They're on the back. They're on the back side of the vehicle towards the back wheel.
Okay.
So if you're looking at it from the side, you'll obviously be able to see someone. Even
and are they? Are you able to use them 24 hours a day?
No, we do 4 a.m. to midnight. So those hours can be adjusted, but we do that just because my mom always said nothing good happens past midnight. So we shut them off for a couple of hours. But we also recognize that some people have odd hours that they work, and you'll find a lot of people actually use something like this for regular commuting. So if someone wants to be able to get to their job or get home at 5 a.m. or so, they have the ability to do that.
Do you have any reflectors or anything like that on the helmets that you guys provide?
Not on the helmets. Nope.
I would feel much better about it having increased reflectors, especially if they're going to be ridership after dusk or before dawn, just for safety.
Well, they have headlights and taillights and everything.
Okay. Good.
So so you can see them from the front and from the back from about 400 or 500 feet. And then from the side via those reflectors. But the helmets that we have
turn on.
What was that?
Do they automatically?
They do. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they have to be street legal. Yeah, they're very fancy. I will say I think it's been a number of years since this has come here, and there's been huge advancements over the last couple of years. I mean, similar to what car companies do, where every year Lexus and Mercedes comes up with enhanced safety features and better tires, better diagnostic systems. We just plucked all the best engineers from all of those car companies and said, hey, can you make a pretty cool scooter? And that's what they did.
Thanks. Well, there was one constituent that had written in over some concerns of being able to access customer service. It seemed like in case of, a customer being overcharged or something where they're trying to mitigate that. What kind of does your customer service access look like? And if our constituents are having any issues with it, do we have a mode to follow up or a number to call or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a whole multitude of ways to get in touch with us, which I think is really nice. Obviously, we're a global company, so all of our support systems are 24/7. They kind of have to be to support all of those different countries and continents that we're in. So there's a phone number that you can call. There's chat on our website. There's chat on the app. There's an email address. There's social media outlets. The city staff will have access to a dedicated account manager. We've actually already put Dan and Tyler and Julio in touch with that individual. So they've actually already started this launch process. So, they can essentially be the points of contact there. And if any questions or concerns come up with different constituents or residents, that can automatically be funneled to them. But I think what's nice about this program is that I can guarantee that within the first 2 to 4 weeks, you will receive questions or comments, maybe some concerns from different residents. And after that 4-week mark, you won't hear anything. There's just something about you're bringing something new. Maybe there's some concerns, and all of a sudden people go, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought, or hey, I know how to get in touch with this company or this vendor when things happen. So I guarantee after that 4-week mark, all of a sudden things will kind of just evaporate.
Awesome. And then my last question is for city. I know there's a small amount of revenue that comes in from this. Where is that designated to go?
General fund. It'll go directly to the general fund. And you're right, it is a small amount. It's about 10 cents a ride. And last time with Lime scooters, which was basically the identical amount, I think it generated a couple $1,000s, you know, two to four in that range.
Okay. Okay.
That was also only a 90-day pilot at the time. So if you analyze this, you know, it could be closer to even $10,000.
Great. All right. Those are all my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for my part, I read the contract pretty carefully, and all my questions were answered in there, except one. I just had one question, and it has to do with the contract. It specified that scooters could be left in the furniture zone on our sidewalks, but also that they could be in a corral. And I was just wondering, are you planning on having some corrals for these, or will they mostly be in the furniture zone?
Yeah, I think if it's something that comes down the road, that's something that we can do. What I like to say is, you know, this program technically is impermanent. This is only for a year, so we don't want to construct something that maybe is permanent on a temporary program. So once the city feels like this is something that needs to be extended, and they view a program like this as being 3, 4, 5, 7 years, I think it makes a lot of sense to invest in that. And that's basically just pulling out one parking space and replacing it with scooter and bike parking. So it's not a huge lift. We've done it with a number of cities, but I think for the time being, we'll mostly focus on that furniture zone.
That makes sense to me. I'm really excited to have another scooter program in town. I think it, you know, there's a cool factor to it, but it also, from a very practical standpoint, does allow people to kind of get around from one place to another and go to lunch and go to the dentist and do the things that they want to do on a scooter. So I'm really glad to have you as a partner. With that, clerk, will you please take the roll?
President Stonecipher, we need a motion and a second first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I forgot to get the item on the table. Do I hear a motion to approve item 7?
Councilmember
so
Tui,
moves.
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We've asked our questions. Now, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Thank you. That concludes our business agenda for today. Before we move to our executive session, I'd like to just remind our public that we will be meeting in person next week at our meeting at 6:30 p.m. In council chambers, downtown Everett. If you'd like to provide comments in writing before the meeting, you may send those to council at everettwa.gov, and all comments received will become part of the public record. There's information on the city website about how you can participate electronically in the meeting. And we will now move into executive session, which is expected to last 25 minutes, and we will reconvene with the possible council action to follow. The City Council has returned from its executive session, and I'd now like to call on City Attorney Hall to help us understand our action.
Okay, thank you. We're recommending that council authorize the mayor to enter a settlement agreement with Allstate Insurance on behalf of their claimant, Catherine Zamperin. This matter involved a minor traffic collision with one of our vehicles. The total amount of the settlement is $5,985.26. That includes $2673.74 for bodily injury. That was essentially some chiropractic visits, and $33,1152 for property damage to the automobile. We believe this is a fair settlement and in the interest of the city to authorize.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Tui makes the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Vogel seconds.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the settlement. We'll go down the roll to see if any questions. Councilmember Tui, any questions from you?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Vogel?
No questions.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
No questions.
Councilmember Ryan? Councilmember Schwab?
No questions.
Councilmember Fosse?
Questions.
And I have no questions. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And with no further business, we are adjourned. Bye, everyone.